Bursts of colored powder going off like fireworks. Thoughts are getting louder, going off like fireworks. I can't find an answer, gotta find something that works. It's the fact that they'd consider, that's the part that really hurts. So inconsiderate, a simple, thoughtless concept, not yet even brought into fruition. I can't handle it. I just sit here slowly suffering, leading up to the onset, when these are the things that we come up with, should we follow intuition. Why does it bother me? I know it's wrong, but that's not right. Create disturbance, suck up the attention. Why is it that you can't see? The scene is hung, you stained the sight. Maybe that wasn't your intention. It's going off like fireworks. It's going off like fireworks. I'm going off like fireworks. I'm holding on to dire words, going off like fireworks. I don't want to lose you because of this. I abuse myself because of this. Find another thing to do instead of this. Can you forgive after I said all this? Sometimes I wish I could let go, but I know in the end I'd be filled with regret, so I stay in the darkness and choose to resent those who make shows of their colors. Who am I to prevent those? Bursts of colored powder, going off like fireworks. Thoughts are getting louder, going off like fireworks. I can't find an answer, gotta find something that works. It's the fact that they'd consider, that's the part that really hurts. It's the fact that I'd destroy her, that's the part that really hurts. Hello and welcome. That poem you just heard was my poem called Fireworks, which is part of my book called Maybe Someday, Maybe Someday. And I wrote that poem in high school when I was 18 years old. And as with all the poems in this book, it was a time in my life that was particularly challenging, and I was really dealing with a lot of difficult stuff, both internally and externally. And I, as I've explained before, used writing throughout this book to help me begin to cope with the things I was dealing with and start to better understand them and begin to work through them so I could end up getting to a better place and eventually write my second book, which is called I Love Him at Last, which came out earlier this year. And so, of course, if you're interested in either of these books and checking them out further, there are links down in the description to buy them if you would like to do that. But yeah, anyway, as we do, I will now share a bit more about this poem I just shared with you and talk a bit more about what the meaning and story behind this poem was for me. So this poem originally kind of came about because some people close to me at the time, including some friends, my brother, and my girlfriend at the time, were kind of starting to do some things that I just didn't really agree with and were acting sort of in these like reckless kind of ways or doing pranks and stuff and just a bunch of things that just didn't feel right to me and kind of caused a bit of inner conflict with myself because it's like these are people I care about and people I want to be with, but I don't like the things that they're doing and I don't want to be a part of that. And it like made me upset knowing that these people were doing these things that just bothered me so much. And especially at that point in my life, I was very much I guess, like reserved kind of person. Like I didn't really want to stand out or like take any risks or like do anything crazy at all. I wanted to just keep it simple, just try to be as good and simple a person as I could and just kind of keep to myself and not do anything to like bring attention to myself or anything in any sort of big way. For me, both in kind of the positive ends of that and the negative sides of bringing attention to yourself. And I felt that the things some of these people were doing at the time were definitely leaning more into the negative side of things that, as I said, I just couldn't accept or be really okay with. So as I say there near the beginning of the poem, where I say, so inconsiderate, a simple, thoughtless concept, that's kind of how I describe these things that they'd be doing. It just, of course, felt like an inconsiderate thing to do, and like they weren't really thinking about the possible consequences of their actions and everything. And I remember that there were a variety of things that kind of contributed to this overall, but I remember the main thing that really um, made me write this and just like kind of set me over the edge with all this stuff was that they were talking about all these plans for like a senior prank thing that everyone was going to do, and some of their ideas that they were coming up with just felt so wrong and beyond the things that they had done before, and just felt way too extremely like negative to me. And it just really bothered me that they would even consider these things. And so that's also what I mean just before that, where I say it's the fact that they'd consider. That's the part that really hurts. Just the fact that they would even consider doing these things alone already bothered me so much. And then, as I say a little later, how it was not yet even brought into fruition. And then I just sit here slowly suffering, leading up to the onset, even though these things hadn't even happened yet. Just the fact that they were considering this and talking about it was already bad enough to me. But the point of this poem isn't just to express how this stuff bothered me. It's also trying to, in a way, kind of come to terms with that stuff and have a bit more of empathy with how they were thinking, and trying to have a bit more understanding, even if maybe I still don't agree with it and want to be a part of it and stuff. Just trying to start to have some acceptance, because I didn't like how it was making me feel, like resenting these people that were so close to me because of these things. But of course, I couldn't help but be bothered by it, just because it wasn't me. So I was trying to kind of think of how, kind of as I say in the third stanza there, maybe that wasn't your intention. Maybe, even though I see this all as a very negative thing, maybe they did not have any sort of bad intentions with this stuff, and we're just kind of trying to have some fun. And maybe there's an aspect of them not really considering their actions and ending up doing something that's kind of negative, but trying to kind of give them like the benefit of the doubt that maybe their intentions weren't as bad as they seemed like they could be to me, and they're not trying to negatively impact anything as I maybe saw it as. But of course, that didn't completely stop my mind from drifting into these darker areas and sort of obsessing over these things and just worrying about the impact that it could have on all sorts of stuff. And then that next part, I say how I don't want to lose you because of this. I abuse myself because of this. And that's kind of really showing how, even though they're doing these things that bother me and it's really, in a way, pulling me away from them, I really don't want to like lose these people and leave them or anything because of the choices they're making. I wanted to be able to still get along with them and have a good understanding with them and everything, and trying to sort of meet in the middle in a way and try to forgive them for these things despite how it's maybe affected me. And then there's also that aspect of how I really kind of got down on myself because of the ways I was feeling. Like I felt like such a bad person for even thinking badly of them because of the things they were doing. So I really wasn't super nice to myself about all that at the time, and just am hoping desperately that they can maybe forgive me for thinking these things and saying some of the things I did negatively toward them because of the things they were doing. And then that next part, I think, is probably the most important stanza of this whole poem here, where it says, "Sometimes I wish I could let go, but I know in the end I'd be filled with regret, so I stay in the darkness and choose to resent those who make shows of their colors. Who am I to prevent those?" I think that's the part where I'm really coming to the realization of like the truth of the matter here, where there are those times where, despite my personality and everything and the way I do things, there are some times where I kind of feel like, what if I could just let go a bit more like these people do and just kind of not overthink and like care so deeply about everything as I do, and just sort of like live in the moment a bit more and live a little bit more wildly as they were and everything. But then, as I say, I know I'd end up being filled with regret because that's just not who I am, and I can't help but caring and thinking about all this stuff. And I know if I would take part in this stuff, I wouldn't really, it wouldn't feel like me, and I'd end up regretting those choices. So I don't, and I stay in my own sort of corner away from that. And I, at the time, would often, as I say there, like resent those people who do go out and do these things. But then I think the very most important part of this part is the very end there, where I say, who am I to prevent those? Kind of realizing that despite the fact that obviously this kind of life and everything is very much not for me. Everyone's different. Not everyone's going to want to live their life the same way that I do. And who am I to prevent people from living their lives the way they want to, freely? Some people have all sorts of colors that they want to express from themselves and let be seen and have an impact and take risks and maybe do something that's kind of stupid, but that's just who they are. And as I said earlier, like, they probably didn't have any sort of horrible intentions with it. It's just that's how they live, and it's not me, but that doesn't necessarily make it wrong. And that's kind of what I was realizing and coming to terms with as I wrote this. And finally, I think it's kind of important to remember, as I mean, I mentioned earlier that I wrote this a few years ago, like when I was in high school, and it's now like 4 or 5 years on from this time. And so the person I was when I wrote all this is not the person I am now exactly. And while I'm still kind of more that reserved kind of person, as I said earlier, and was at this time, I have successfully become a lot more accepting of other people and their various ways of living. And yeah, sometimes those things can kind of bother me if they go like very much against how I am. I mean, I think that's probably at least somewhat of truth with just about anyone. But I've, of course, gotten to a place where I'm, yeah, much more accepting and can get along a bit better with people who are different from me and do things in all sorts of different ways that maybe don't align with how I am. And that was kind of the important message and lesson I learned from this time in my life and from writing this poem. So that's all I've got for today's video. But as always, of course, thank you very much for watching, and especially if you made it here to the end of the video. I really, truly appreciate you. And of course, if maybe you're new or you want to check out anything else I have, you can subscribe, check out the videos that are already up on my channel. All the past ones from this book are already up, of course, and we'll continue going through the rest of it. And I occasionally do other random videos not connected to this of newer stuff I've written, or just random other things that I feel like doing with my writing and stuff. So feel free to check that out. And of course, I've got links down in the description also to other things I do, like my other social media, and to buying my book if you're interested in any of that. So yeah, I hope to see you here again next time for my poem called Coral Reef. But until then, as always, just remember, we're all broken and we're just arranging the pieces. Thank you.